Welcome to Courageous Conviction. Remember that Jeff and I record each Saturday 5 episodes. So please hit the like button, subscribe so you catch all 5 episodes. We usually start out with one theme or topic. We have to go down a lot of rabbit holes to really understand it. Some things are more sensitive than others right now, what's going on in the world. So hit the like button, subscribe, and let's jump into this video.
Well, the assimilation there,
Yeah.
Sorry, I got my son there yelling something, but having young kids around the family is always interesting, right? I know you've got a couple, but the assimilation, it's a problem, So it's a problem because if we don't have people coming over this border, according to some, we're not going to have a workforce. But But the problem is the people that are coming over the border, it appears nobody wants to work. So they're not knocking down the doors of these people that, that own restaurants, where I work. And I'm talking every restaurant in a whole pretty big city, south of, close to the southern, Mexican border.
Well, my wife has family that came over from Nicaragua, and they're ones in Boston, and a lot of them are going up to Chicago. But he went to work in a restaurant, and he paid $20,000 to get here, and he paid off his debt, so he felt really good. Well, I didn't really quite understand where he got the money from, who he had to pay off, right? Family, I guess, came together and gave him money, but who he's paying off is both family and cartel. He came here the first time, they caught him, sent him back, went back down, got the money, came back again, and now he's here, paid off the cartel, paid off his family, and he's happy with that. But he's going to work. He's working, right? Why would you want to go to work, though, for the majority of them, if your government is going to house you, to give you money, give you a cell phone, to pay for your cell phone? That's what's happening right now, when they come through. When they come through, they're getting these things. They're getting money. They're getting cell phones. They're getting transportation where they want to go. They were actually flying them. Remember we talked about that? They were flying them, and you had videos floating around going viral that had illegal immigrant, undocumented immigrant lines getting on the planes. No boarding tickets, right? So they weren't even being vetted as far as safety is concerned. Now, and I don't want to go on that whole thing today. What I want to get to is a gathering site. Go ahead, Jeff.
I got to take care of a family issue right now.
Well, I'm going to keep talking about this. You step out. I'll keep talking on this. Okay. So what I want to get to here, and keep in mind, please, that the idea that we have is not out of cruelty, not out of hatred. I've lived in 5 countries during my lifetime, and I was legal in all those countries. Now, including the U.S. So I've lived in 4 countries outside of the U.S. So, I've had to adapt in and to assimilate in. Now, when I went to these other countries, I took my American mentality and I went to these countries, but I didn't go put my American flag up because I felt that was wrong. Now, I had my American flag up in my office because that's where I'm from. Right. But I didn't go put it out in front of my house. That would have been a complete disrespect for the country I was then residing in.
Yeah.
I learned their languages, right? I've learned their languages. Now, most of the countries I lived in were Latin countries. I lived in Brazil, so I speak Portuguese. And so, and that wasn't easy for me to do either. I'm not somebody who's gifted in learning languages. Trust me, getting through high school, if I didn't have a young teacher who really liked me and wanted to help me get through, I wouldn't have got through my couple years of Spanish. Then, learning Portuguese confused me. And my point being, it was not easy for me to assimilate into these cultures. I did have to adapt their culture. Now, when I live with the natives, what my wife and I do, I went to church with my suit and tie, and then I learned the natives, and I went and bought native attire, and I started wearing native attire. And to the natives, because everybody else had native attire on, I wanted to assimilate and be part of their culture, not take from their culture, right? However, there was, in the end, because of discrimination, we fought, even though we tried to assimilate, and so I understand what it's like to be discriminated against, discrimination that we stood up against in the church. My wife was race-cited president. then released from legislative president because the natives did not like the fact that she was a foreigner as a legislative president. Okay. And they wanted to keep their culture. They didn't want anything else outside of their culture being spread or taught in Relief Society. So the bishop then released her on that basis that, well, you're not native, so I'm going to release you and make you the first counselor and put a native as the president so we can, calm the natives down. They can maintain their culture. Well, that's a divisive idea. That's pride. And the 70 came in and really tried to change that. But that's, like I said, my stake president just kind of threw his hands in the air and saying, look, hopefully I have 2 more years left here, but I am not going to try to teach these people anymore of the truth of the matter of when it comes to the idea of what the church doctrine is when it comes to being prepared and being of one mind and overcoming the pride. So I can preach this mantra, but basically I'm just going to try to teach them to cling to Christ. And that's the least I can get to, the least common ground we have. And so that's what I'm going to. And I kind of think, Jeff, that's where we are as a church. That's why it's just be Christ-like, just love each other, be kind. We're just back to the basics of basics, just trying to hold on to the shoestrings and keep something together so we're not completely divided going into what's coming. Now, Elder Bednar says this, and this I can't remember what summit he was at. It was a summit that was like full of investors. It wasn't into a church or anything like that, just like an investor summit, and they brought him as the person in charge of, or one person that had a large role or the experience then of running a large organization on a global field, right? And so in his talking, he is, man, I'm losing my train of thought. I have so many things going through my head right now. I just want to talk about that he, what did he say last night? Well, why don't you think about that? Why don't you put some comments there?
I'm going to want to hear about the Elder Bednar. You're going to have to send me the link for that talk, because I like Elder Bednar and some of the talks we passed back and forth, about things, the Christofferson video you sent.
Yeah. What'd you take away from that? What'd you take away from Elder Christofferson's talk? That was a few years ago, right? What'd you take from that?
Yeah, I remember that talk from before. Yeah, I really, it resonated with me, the Christofferson talk. Trying to remember now.
Well, yeah, and he's talking to help you refresh your memory, because I sent that one and another Bednar talk behind it that was on the same topic. It was basically on love, right? Mm-hmm. And
right, unconditional love, right?
Unconditional love, yeah.
And the difference between our Father loves us, in heaven He loves us in a way unconditionally, but it doesn't go without having to make live the commandments, for example. He's still gonna, his love is unwavering for each, child, or for each of his children. And yet, we can certainly fall out of graces by not living the commandments. And that's, and I think he points that out pretty effectively, and changes it helps us understand more, in a much more clear, our need to understand the difference between right and wrong. I think that's the difficult thing that we are living in right now is, does the love of Christ mean there is no difference between right and wrong? Absolutely not. There is black and white. I think this whole, 50 shades of gray kind of mentality has to start going by the wayside. And you look at other countries that have had enough crime, because of whatever it is. They've supported these governments that are coming in. The Philippines, El Salvador, are prime examples of that. There are more out there that where criminals are being hunted, and we're gonna have to start doing that in this country, And if people got a problem with that, well, hey, I'd rather have safe streets. I want my kids to be able to live without the fear of having a home invasion. We're going to go ahead. We're going that direction. I don't see why people don't understand that. The cops aren't coming to your house to protect you, right? If they're coming to your house, somebody's going to jail, and it's probably not going to be in your favor. I don't.
It's the Gustavo now, right?
Right. I really don't, want cops coming to my house. I don't get pulled over, on the street, and I like my life, that way. On the other hand, we want to be able to be safe and be protected. It'd be nice to be able to call law enforcement if you needed them, you know. Um, but we're not really at that point right now, and if we start having continue to have this huge influx of people that are criminal, coming over the border and organizing themselves, and they don't want to work because they're not going to the restaurants. They don't want those jobs. People used to say, oh, well, the Mexicans and people are coming over south of the border, they're taking the jobs that people don't want. Well, that's not the case right now. They're not looking for those jobs. They're getting free phones, they're getting paychecks, they're getting places to live. In some cases, they're nice hotel rooms. And when's the end of that? They're being bused to whatever city they want to live in.
Now, granted, I don't think they're getting a hotel room all to themselves. I'm sure they've got to share rooms, and it's kind of like,
it's better than a park bench.
Well, yeah, they're not homeless, and their food's being provided for them, so they got the basics of life. So where's the motivation? You give a man a fish, you feed him for a day,
Right.
teach him how to fish, feed him for a lifetime, right?
There's no motivation to work.
And this is where Elder Bednar was going. I like this part because he was talking about the church education department and the CES. And I love this because I couldn't believe I heard this come out of his mouth. I was just like, finally I heard this. He has been in academia for years, right? Even when he was working with Sam Walton, it was with a university that he was working with him on. And when he was asked to come to which is now BYU Idaho, Rick's College back then, he was talking about his interview, and they were saying, if you were made president of Rick's College, what would you do different, or what would you do? He said, I have no idea. I've never been the dean of a college before. That was his response to Elder Eyring when he called him, right? Maybe it was Elder Eyring. But under Elder Bednar is when it became a 4-year school, and pathways, that was all developed under Elder Bednar's lead. I didn't know that, right? And the idea was education. And so this gentleman asked him, so education, providing education, and then the gentleman says to him, he says, so what do you qualify then as an education? And I loved this. I'm going to send this to you, and we should unpack that talk one day because it's not at a pulpit. And that's what I like sometimes. You got to listen to these same general authorities when they speak on the same topics outside of general conference. They may speak on a topic in general conference is very general. When they get outside of that, like at BYU, for example, or in different interviews, they're more specific, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Elder Bednar having that attorneys summit or that meeting where he was, where you heard him talk about, hey, we made a mistake as a church for locking down, and that won't happen again going forward.
Yeah,
right?
I love that comment.
Yeah. And so, there is, you can see where they made a mistake. Okay, the general first authorities, they even said we made a mistake in doing that. So mistakes happen, but that doesn't shake our testimonies because our leaders still trying to figure it out. The Lord left it for them to figure it out too, right? They got to fulfill their measures, and now they have the much more in tune with figuring things out than we are. That's why they're there, because they've shown that they can actually be consistent in obeying the commandments and having the Spirit with them, right? And so that's a huge separation, and then they're given those mantles. Here's what he said about education, and this will all come back to, I think, getting back to this, the law of consecration and the idea of Zion and being of one mind, and how do we assimilate? Well, I want to look at how it's going to be assimilated in the law of Zion and the law of consecration, and I think that's what we need to look at as members of the church. That's the doctrine.
I thank you for being with us on Courageous Conviction. Remember, there's 5 episodes each week that we put out. We have to go down a lot of rabbit holes, so stay with us. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and don't miss tomorrow's episode on Courageous Conviction.